So I'm here at the LBQ Women's Health Conference 2017 with Bonnie Hart, who's given a fantastic keynote on the Darlington Statement and chaired a panel afterwards on the bioethics of creating queer families, which was actually a very interesting conversation and a bit challenging for lots of people in the room, I think. So if you could just give us a brief rundown on the Darlington Statement, you know, what the event was and what came out of it.
Okay, so after a long time providing peer support to people, it became really obvious that we needed to be able to create a separate event where we talked about some of the political and human rights issues and worked strategically towards addressing those. And so in March this year we had a community retreat, a human rights retreat for intersex people in Darlington and Sydney. There were 22 people, different variations that came to that retreat, representing 6 different organisations from 3 different countries, but predominantly it was Australian and New Zealand, and also America. And one of the outcomes that came from that was we produced a consensus statement, the Darlington Statement, which addresses 59 points of concern and demands of our community, which relate to health and well-being, human rights implications, peer support, education, stigma. So a lot of the big issues that affect us. We did it as a capacity building exercise, because at the moment we're such a small community and we're really a lot of marginalised people who have a history of trauma from medicalised violence that we've received as children because of our bodily difference with being intersex people. And there's just a few people trying to do so much work that we're trying to build capacity in terms of bringing more of our emerging leaders together and engaging them and listening to what their concerns are. And that's why the Darlington Statement was such an important and monumental document, because we were in 2 days able to draft this mammoth list of concerns of all of the issues that affect our community.
In the health and wellbeing space, which is obviously, I guess, what's relevant here today, what are some of those priorities for the people who were there at Darlington? I mean, look, you've talked about the medicalisation of your bodies and the violence, and we've heard certainly a bit about surgical intervention today.
A lot of the health concerns are actually just around consent, and bodily autonomy. So having control over what happens to our bodies, having access to services that we want when we need them, and being informed enough and connected enough with other people that have been through similar sorts of situations that we can make informed consent about our bodies and what that means. And whether that is accessing pre-existing services that are educated about the diversity of sex characteristics, or whether it's about intersex involvement in generating those services that are appropriate for our community. There's a bunch of specific issues.
You could talk for hours.
I could talk for hours, and then also there's a crossover between I don't have Darlington Statement in front of me, so I can't actually outline what points are what. Uncomfortable. You don't happen to have a copy, do you?
I don't, sorry. Not on paper.
No, that's all right. Sorry.
But you certainly spoke with passion about some of these things today, and it's certainly about the fragmenting of your community and finding a common language and a common voice, I guess. Could you touch on that?
Well, I don't think that people set out and choose the life of becoming an intersex activist. I certainly don't remember making a conscious decision for this to be such an emphasis in my life. Really, the situations are so dire and the alternative is so awful that I just have to do it. This work has to be done. Children are still being maimed, and we need to do this work, and people need to be connected. And we can just see the difference that it makes for people in their self-acceptance and in their empowerment to make ongoing decisions about their life and life choices, health choices, that community connection has. that benefit is just like, it's intense. You can't replicate it.
I was astonished to hear that there's, still no medical consent over any of this as well.
But yeah, it's not news.
No,
like,
it's not
still
news.
No medical consent. Like even the consensus statement from the clinicians in 2006 said that there was no consensus in terms of treatment. But then also for outcomes, there's like limited benchmarks, and so, and they, there aren't any even studies they haven't looked at even no treatment as what the outcomes of that is, and so it's really worrying.
Well, how can you make informed decisions when there's no information?
That's right.
Look, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Pleasure. Thanks.